have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker for the evening. We are also so lucky to have with us tonight a local author. Wendy Wan-Long Shang has a lifelong passion for improving the lives of children. She began in college volunteering in elementary schools and continued in a more professional way after law school, volunteering as a court-appointed special advocate in the foster care system and working as an attorney on juvenile justice issues. She is now a full-time writer and mother and firmly believes in the power of books to change children's lives for the better. Her first book, The Great Wall of Lucy Wu, received the Asian Pacific American Libraries Association Children's Literature Award, as well as a spot on multiple state reading lists. Her second book, The Way Home Looks Now, was a Junior Library Guild selection and a book page pick for Best Book of the Year. It will also represent Virginia this year on the National Book Festival's Great Reads list. When she is not reading or writing, Wendy roots for the Nationals with her husband and 3 children. She wanted to say, go Nats. And here to give some very usable and relevant remarks to our young writers here this evening, please help me welcome. Is this still working? It might be.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm so thrilled to have been invited here today by B'nai B'rith, and I think it's just such an extraordinary program to be a part of, and congratulations to all of you to be part of this. It's always a thrill to be in the company of thoughtful, caring people who create. And I know that you are this kind of person because you have chosen to make this world a better place by creating a book for children. And this is just an awesome, hopeful task. And do I need to tell you that the world is in desperate need of your kind? I don't think so. I want to assure you, based on my experience, that the people who write books for children are some of the very best people I've ever met. They are smart, compassionate, observant, and I think this is really important. They are adults who have not forgotten how to laugh. They are also extremely good. I've been asked to talk to you about the writing life and about how to become a writer, and the first thing I want to tell you is that I'm still learning, and I think I'll always be learning about myself and the writing process, and I think it's one of the tasks of the writer is to strive toward mastery while retaining a sense of wonder. And I want to talk to you a bit about the care and feeding of your writerly self, especially as writers who care about diversity, inclusion, and tolerance. And because this is the 10th anniversary of the Diverse Minds Writing Challenge, I have come up with 10 thoughts I will share with you. Number 1, don't be afraid to call yourself a writer. There is perhaps no profession whose title creates so much anxiety for its members. Teachers, plumbers, doctors know what they do, and they accept the title accordingly. In this town, people are comfortable with titles like consultant and contractor. But there's something about writing that makes people nervous. You can't call yourself a writer unless you're published. You can't call yourself a writer unless it's your full-time profession. You can't call yourself a writer unless you've won an award or have gotten a certain degree. And I say nonsense. If you write because writing is how you make sense of the world and how you convey your soul to others, then you are a writer. I think I'm a little biased about this because when I was a kid, I loved to write, but I never thought of myself as a writer because all the writers I knew were either dead or British, and I was neither. So I didn't qualify. Actually, I didn't think I thought about it that far. I just didn't think it was a thing that could happen. So I'm here to tell you, there is no bar you must pass. There is no person you must be. There is no magical state of inspiration that you must enter before you can claim this title. Your only qualification is that you must write and you must be willing to work at your writing. And anything else takes away from the fact that this is a craft that requires work and lots of it. Call yourself a writer and then go write. Number 2, write a lot. There are so many different forms of writing for you to play with, and I want you to experiment with all of them. The short poem, the movie review, the celebrity profile, the novel and verse, the essay, the narrative nonfiction, the short story, the epic poem, the love poem, the expose, the one-act play. I could go on and on and on. Experiment with as many as you can and get uncomfortable. Study the forms of people who do it better than you. Hate what you write and make it better. Love what you write and find room for improvement. Take a workshop, find a teacher, read a book about the form, and enter another contest. And that's how I got my start, is that I entered a work in progress grant contest by the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And I won with the first 10 pages of what would turn out to be The Great Wall of Lucy Wu. And I also want to say, because this reminded me, that you should finish what you start. You don't have to finish everything, but if you're a perpetual starter and not finisher, think about it. When I got the call that I had won Lucy, I had written 50 pages, and I thought I was never going to finish. And once I got that call, I wrote the next 100 pages in 6 months. My third point, I am totally stealing. I'm stealing, but you know, if you're going to steal, steal from the best. And this is a thought from Ira Glass, who's the host of the very popular radio program, This American Life. My brother and I, who agree on absolutely nothing, agree that Ira Glass is the bomb. What Ira says is that when you are starting out, there is going to be a gap between what you know is good and what you are producing. And it's frustrating because people who get into creative work know what's good, and they know what it looks like, because we call that taste. And they know that maybe what they're doing is not always good. And Ira wants to assure us all that this is a phase everyone goes through, and it's a phase you can get through, although most people get frustrated and stop. So don't stop. You have to do what I told you in number 2, which is to write a lot. And then you have to do what I'm going to tell you in number 4. And number 4 is learn to take criticism. The biggest difference I see between writers who get better and writers who do not is that writers who know how to take criticism get better. My writing teacher, Mary Qualification, taught us this lesson indirectly by having a rule in Writer's Workshop that when your work was being reviewed, you could not say a word. If someone loved your work or hated it, you didn't say a thing. And for the longest time, I did not understand why she had this rule, and usually when I thought to ask, I was the person who was not allowed to talk, so I never got to ask. It wasn't until I was in a situation where we didn't have this rule that I finally understood that not being able to respond immediately and directly to the criticisms of your work is pretty much how it works in real life for writers. If your reader is angered or confused by your words, you can't stand over them and explain your meaning to them. Your words have to make sense on the page. Also, not being able to argue with someone gives you a chance to live with that opposing idea and make room for it, and allow for the possibility that maybe you could do better. You will find that there are people who give better critiques than others. You will find that there are people who genuinely want your writing to improve and care about your development as a writer. You want those people in your posse. You will also find that there are people whose comments are never on point and they make you crazy. You are allowed to decide who is in your head and who is not. But the best response to all of these people is to shut up and nod and pay attention. Number 5 is to cultivate your inspirations. Jack London once said, you can't wait for inspiration, you have to go after it with a club. And yes, do that. You should have a notebook with you all the time. You should be open to inspiration all the time. But I also wanted to add this thought, because this has really been bothering me, is that we are living in an age where we're encouraged to stick to those who agree with us. And the news we receive is calibrated to reinforce our perceptions of the world. And as writers and as thinkers, we should always try to see the other side of the story. We may not agree with someone's actions or their conclusions on how to act, but to become better writers, and more importantly, to keep us all bound together and moving forward, we should, I think, try to understand how someone got to their particular situation and viewpoint. We need to be conscious of what we put in our minds, just as we pay attention to what we put in our diets. We need vigorous, healthy ideas, a wide variety of them, and occasionally a notion that seems kind of yucky. Pick up a new news source or podcast. Go to the library, pick a magazine that you usually ignore and read it for 15 minutes. I mean, you don't have to run toward the people who make you really angry, but maybe pay attention to the ones that disturb you just a little bit. Number 6, remember that your stories don't have to be perfect, but they do have to honor your readers. I feel really strongly about this, especially as a writer for children, because we are providing a space for a reader to recognize themselves as a beloved part of the world. Tell your stories as a way for your reader to see that they are more connected and more alike to everyone else than they imagined. If you are writing diverse characters, work hard to get it right. And I'm not just talking about cultural competence, I'm talking about having our characters express a full humanity, that they can be both imperfect and noble and kind and cruel. Because our readers deserve nothing less than to see themselves fully on the page. And if you're ever in doubt, write the story that you always wanted as a child, because you are your own first reader. and trust that you have an experience that's worth sharing, even if it's been discussed before, it hasn't been written the way that you are going to write about it. And if this is something you feel strongly about, I guarantee that your authentic voice will shine. Now, number 7, I usually stay away from absolutes, but I feel really strongly about this. Never, ever install Windows 10 on your computer. Number 8, find your people. Writing is a lonely activity, but being a writer does not have to be. And nearly every writer I've ever known has realized that the reason why we feel so odd in groups is because we were in groups that had no writers. We see the world differently, but it's sort of in the same way. And it's important to find that group of support when the chips are down, so we can find our go-to readers to have people understand exactly what we're going through. You may, on occasion, as a result of knowing other writers better, find yourself in the unfortunate position of being envious of another writer's achievements. Jealousy. They have more books, more publications, more awards, and the most exquisite way of describing that moment before a first kiss. I am telling you now to get rid of that poison as best as you can. And I am telling you now that more than likely someone envies you just as you envy someone else. So remember, you're on your own path, and walk it, embrace it. We have each of our own journeys to take, and don't steal from your own joy by wasting it being jealous of someone else. Number 9, I know you've heard a lot. It's to read. But I want to kind of expand on this idea. Because I had this really unfortunate moment a few years ago when I realized that I was the reading equivalent of a top 40 radio listener. I was reading the award winners, the books everyone was buzzing about, the popular books. But the thing is, I wasn't a top 40 book yet, not yet. And my books have gotten a lot of love because of librarians and booksellers and teachers and other writers who read beyond the top 40. And so from that moment, I have pushed myself to read more deeply, and I have been rewarded. So I urge you to be that reader too. It is an act of generosity and intellectual curiosity to dig deeper and to find those books that don't get as much love. And if you're not sure where to start, there are some fabulous awards for children's books that I want to commend to you, including the Coretta Scott King Award for authors and illustrators who are African American and describing the African American experience. The Pura Prey Award similarly celebrates Latin American Latino authors. The Asian Pacific American Librarian Awards. The Stonewall Book Award features outstanding writing on the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender experience. And the Schneider Family Book Award for books that embody artistic expression on the disability experience. Some of these books you will have heard of on these lists, as many of them you won't. There will be books you will discover to your astonishment that you love absolutely and are amazed that no one is shouting about them from the rooftops. So then, be that champion, that advocate, that rooftop shouter of other writers. Send them a note telling them how much you love their books, or recommend them to your friends, a stranger in the bookstore, or on social media. The whole point of this is to make connections. And sometimes we're sending, and sometimes we're receiving, and sometimes we're laying a track to celebrate the journey. My last point is that, well, as I said at the beginning of the speech, writing a children's book is a creative act of hope and goodwill. It is also an act of bravery. It is easy to be cool and cynical and critical, but it takes guts to create. And it's so profound that we know that at various times in history, dictatorships and extremists, including now, have burned books as a way to extinguish ideas, our brave lights, and alternative views of the world. And I dare us all to flip that idea on its head and to think of it in reverse. And that when we love a book, when we really care about a book, and we can't stop thinking about it and talking about it, it actually changes the way we think, the way we see the world, and the way we see each other. And we spread the book. And this book could change the world if we gave it enough time. And so my last point is to you, is to make sure that you know that you are the most powerful people in the world, because your book could be that book. Don't be afraid to swing for the fences. Write with your soul on fire, because we need people whose work is awake and alive. go out with everything you have to offer, with your kind heart and your precious mind and your unique experiences in your very own voice. Right to conquer.